Hello, I'd like to welcome Catherine. So we're going to have a bit of a conversation. I understand that you've been on quite a long journey. So there's been a history of chronic pain
Mm.
and then long COVID and POTS. Would you like to start telling us about your chronic pain journey?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Lorna. So when I was 20, I was doing a second year university, no, third year university, and I was working part-time at a supermarket, and I started getting back pain because I was on checkouts, lifting people's groceries. And typical me, I just sort of pushed through. I went, whatever. I would get back pain and go home from a shift, and then I'd lie down on my nice, comfortable mattress, and then by the morning it'd be gone. And then one day when I was 20, it just didn't go away. And it didn't, I had basically pain from my shoulders to my hips 24/7 for 9 months. And I lost that. Young people have that feeling of invincible, in that they're invincible when you're 2021. You just feel like nothing. I'd never been to a physio in my life. I'd never had pain issues like that before. Suddenly I was struck down by chronic pain and it was horrendous. It was probably the worst period of my life. I remember crying myself to sleep many nights. I don't even know how how I kept going at uni. And I probably needed endo. Like I probably needed quite a strong opioid to cover that sort of pain. I was in a lot of pain. Um, and the incredible thing was I was told, you have mild scoliosis, 15 degrees, but the back surgeon said, well, he said, I can see someone with 35-degree scoliosis and they've got no pain. You've got 15 degrees. That is just on the borderline of being diagnosed with scoliosis, and you've got this horrendous, severe pain. And so I ended up being sent to a rheumatologist who specializes actually in the mind body approach. And he referred me to a lovely physio who did this Feldenkrais method.
Mm.
And with one session, and she just put these biofeedback pads on my back. And the next day I woke up and the pain was gone. And if you think about it, she wasn't adjusting my tissues. There was nothing she did structurally. I think it was my brain feeling safe, and it just turned the pain off. And I can still remember that day. Just I could barely concentrate on writing my uni essay because I just couldn't believe that I wasn't in pain. Because I think when you're in pain all the time, you forget what it's like to be out of pain. So,
And
so, but after that, it sort of predisposed me to all these injuries. I just assumed that I was weak and I had scoliosis and I was vulnerable, and I didn't know about hypermobility. I hadn't heard about that yet, but I would just get basically name a joint and I've injured it. So then I couldn't sit down for 4 years. I had to stand up at work at my desk all day. Then I got not scoliosis. I got SIJ pain, sacroiliac joint pain, bilaterally, and I had to wear a brace. And it, I've had basically 19 years of well, pretty much. The good news is, long story short, I don't really have pain anymore, which is fantastic through the mind body approach.
that's
Just
that's
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 been
brilliant.
brilliant.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
so good.
then
And I have, yeah, no, sorry,
you've
go on.
had this time of being pain free. Um,
Yes.
And then the long COVID came along.
Mm,
Tell us about
yes.
that part of your life.
Yeah, I actually had pain shortly before I got long COVID. I'd which I'm sure was just a stress response actually. At the time I got long COVID, I was working part-time as a hospital chaplain, 2 shifts a week at the hospital. I was trying to be the perfect wife and mother. We've got two sons with special needs, which they have a lot of therapy. We have to get funding for them from the government insurer, for people with disabilities. So I have to do a lot of paperwork to advocate for them every year to get funding. And I was, in the words of Curable, the typical traits of people pleaser, perfectionist, strong inner critic. And I was just running and running and running. And I remember been so afraid of long COVID. I would read the articles about it, and the newspapers would say, they would profile this lady saying, oh, this lady was climbing mountains and now she's got long COVID, and, she's lost her job and she's got brain fog and she can't finish a sentence, and she can't take care of her children. And I was just so afraid. I think my fear of long COVID was 10 out of 10. And to the point where sometimes I wonder if we didn't know about long COVID, I actually wonder if it would have happened. For me, because like if there was something called like long bronchitis or long paper cut, you'd be absolutely terrified of getting a paper cut or getting bronchitis. But I think I had so much fear. I remember saying to my mother, I don't want to get long COVID. I don't want to get long COVID. I had 4 COVID vaccines, and then I got COVID for the second time, first in May 2022, and then a second infection in November. And I was just running ragged. I was so tired. At the time I got infected, I was so busy. I just felt like I couldn't stop. I couldn't relax. I was constantly trying to keep the house clean, trying to do the boys' therapies. Oh, just so by the time I got it, it was just the last straw. Something had to give, and that was my health. And um, there's a couple of books, you know, when I think the body keeps the score, and another book, when the yeah, and there's another book, when the body says no. And I
Yes,
just
so Body Keeps the
in
Score is Vessel van der Kolk, and when the body says no is Gabamate.
mm,
So they were the two books that you read at that time.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd read them later and realized in hindsight what was going on. But at the time I got infected, we all got it. We were all home. I remember I was really frustrated because it was just before Christmas. It was late November, and I just thought, no, I need to buy Christmas presents. I need to do all these end of year activities. I was so frustrated, and I was really keen to get back to work. I thought, no, I don't want any more than 2 weeks off. I'm really gonna get better in that time. And then I remember going back to work at the 2 week mark, and I just felt so tired. I was with a patient, and this is the last shift I've actually ever worked. I haven't worked since. Um, and we'll come to that later. But I was so tired I could barely actually speak to this patient. She noticed how slow I was in responding because I was just so tired. And then I went to the doctor and I wrote down all my symptoms like brain fog, fatigue, really tired, feeling really dizzy. And he said, "Look, this sounds like long COVID." And I was just petrified. Um, and then I, um, I tried to go back to work one last time, and I drove there, and I just had to drive home and go, I can't do this. I,
But
I can't,
can I
I
ask,
can't
what
do
were
this.
you
Yeah.
afraid of? You said you were petrified. What were you afraid of?
Yeah. I think what I'd been told about fatigue earlier in my life was, this family friend has it, and he's a malingerer and he should just get over himself and get back to work. I'd also heard family members saying, oh, because there was a bit of glandular fever around when I was a teenager, and my family was saying, don't you get glandular fever? You don't want to get fatigue and end up in bed. There was this fear of the condition, of anything to do with fatigue.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I had that exposure. Yeah.
Mhm. So you
Oh.
had these various symptoms going
Mm,
on after you developed
mm,
COVID, a lot of
mm.
fear around those
Yeah,
symptoms and what it
huge.
was associated with. Were
Mm.
you given any medical diagnoses at the time?
Um, at the time, it was quite disappointing. My usual GP was on a long break, and I was seeing another GP at the same clinic, and I felt like I didn't have that personal connection with the GP, and he was sort of said, look, you can go on the waiting list to see this doctor in Melbourne. He'll take 18 months to get into. I don't know enough about this medication to prescribe it for you. I now know that he meant midodrine and navabradine, and so I just was left with nothing, and it felt by this point I was so fatigued. Just to give an example, that I would have to, for every 15 minutes upright, I would have to lie down for 10 minutes, and we put a mattress topper on the tiles on the floor because I was too tired to even, like, if I needed to crash immediately, I couldn't even walk to the bedroom. I just had to, like, go out of the kitchen onto the tiles and just lie down on the floor on this mattress, thin mattress. And I was so tired that, for example, to make lunch, say to make a sandwich, I would rest for half an hour, get up, make the sandwich, rest again for 20 minutes, come back, eat half the sandwich, be too tired to finish the rest, and then just give up because I had no appetite anyway. I completely lost my appetite. I remember trying to force myself to eat or not forcing, but I was lying on my tummy on the floor with cushions under my chin, trying to eat lying down because I was so dizzy I could barely eat sitting up. And it did strike me as like, where does this end? Like, am I going to end up with a feeding tube if I actually can't be upright? And of course, two our boys were like 4 and 2 at that age, which is they need a lot of care at that age. And yeah, it was a very. I felt like the rest of the world was spinning. Everyone else was getting on with their lives, and I was just left, just lying on the floor, looking up at the trees, going, I don't know where my life's going to go from here. Yeah, it was very difficult. You asked about diagnoses. So I was scrolling ABC News, which is our public broadcaster, and I saw an article featuring the Australian PoTS Foundation and a lady there talking about PoTS and long COVID. And I recognised her as through my husband's work actually, and so I got in contact and flew into state to see her and to get diagnosed and got medication. So in all, I got COVID on Remembrance Day, which is 11th of November, and I got diagnosed on Australia Day, actually, the day after Australia Day, 27th of January. So it wasn't long. It was quite short between, is that a couple of months? Yeah, about 10 weeks
And
to get diagnosed with POTS.
they said you
Yeah.
said that you were put on medication. What medication were you put on at that time?
Yeah, I was put on ivabradine to bring down my heart rate, which helped bring down my heart rate, but it didn't help symptomatically. It wasn't until I got mitoderine that was the game changer for me
Mm.
to bring up my blood pressure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so you were saying that you spent a lot of time lying down, struggling to
Mm.
get up.
Oh,
You've now got a POTS diagnosis.
yeah. Yes.
The medication obviously helped you to a certain extent. Where did that take you to? What could you do at that point?
Um, by that point, with once I got the mitoderine on board, and I think by that time I'd checked in with there's a clinic in Melbourne called Active Health Clinic, and they specialise in POTS, long COVID, fatigue, pain, etc. I'd gone in to see an exercise physiologist and learnt a bit about pacing. By that point, I'd also done a a rehab program in like an outpatient rehab hospital, like with an OT and a physio, but that was actually not appropriate. It was trying to do exercises where I was doing lots of postural changes, and it wasn't helpful. Um, by that point, I'd also checked in with Curable and bought their workshops package. So I checked in with the rheumatologist and I said, can I use the mind body approach for long COVID and POTS? And I thought he'd say no, because this is like, I've got POTS. There's objective. I've met the criteria for this. They've taken objective measurements of my blood pressure and heart rate and to show that I have POTS. And he actually said yes. And I just thought, oh, okay. So I really can use the same approach I've used for chronic pain for POTS and long COVID. And that just opened the door to um, a such a shift in mindset and a reduction in fear around symptoms. But that took a long time. Um,
Can I
and
ask
so
you,
yeah,
do you mind telling us a little bit more about the
mm,
Curable app? So for somebody who's never come
yes,
across this app,
yeah.
what is it?
So Curable is a program that's designed to change your relationship with your symptoms, primarily to reduce fear, to calm the nervous system, to reduce fight and flight, and therefore reduce whatever chronic symptoms you have that are not structural. So pain with no structural cause, fatigue, MECFS, all of those sort of things. It's an app where you get these little bite-sized, 5-10 minute educational segments, meditations. They call it somatic tracking, where you learn to observe your sensation through a lens of safety rather than fear. And it's got sort of people. It's the names associated like Nicole Sachs and Alan Gordon. Um, oh, David Clark. All these sort of big names in the mind body world in America are sort of in this app. Yeah.
Yeah, great. So you,
Mm.
rheumatologist was like, yeah, have a go at the mind body approach.
Yeah.
You started using Curable app, And
Mm.
where did that take you? Where did you go from there?
Yeah, it forced me, I think because fatigue just floored me. With pain, I could do a bit of mind body and feel better and be like, okay, I'm doing well now. But with fatigue, like I was forced to by sheer severity of the symptoms. So, for example, with when I'd had these various joint injuries, I could put on a wrist brace, I could put on an ankle boot because I sprained my ankle. I could put on a thumb brace or whatever splint I needed, and I could still, cook dinner, hang out the washing, make the lunch boxes, do the things. But fatigue literally floored me. I just could not stay upright to do any of those tasks for any length of time. I'd have to break it up into very small chunks. And so, due to the severity of the fatigue, I was absolutely forced to go, wow, I need to get into this body of work more. Because I really hadn't done somatic tracking with the pain. I hadn't done much journal speak, which is this method of journaling by Nicole Sachs, where she describes it as taking a ladle to your emotional reservoir of repressed emotions and stored trauma that you ever wanted to deal with and let it out of your system so it doesn't need to present itself as physical symptoms. And so I really got into all of that. And in fact, it was yourself actually when I typed mind body recovery long COVID PoTS into YouTube, and your interview came up with Irily from Surfer.
Mm.
And I watched those two lectures and went, wow. And yours was the first lecture where someone said PoTS symptoms or long COVID can be aggravated by emotional stress. Because up till that point, um, I thought it was all about posture. And with PoTS, it's very easy to be very afraid because with pain, I can put a brace on my wrist and go, okay, my wrist is safe. I can change that nappy. I can lift that bag of shopping. With PoTS, it's a lot of, for me, it's a lot of head symptoms. So dizziness, head fatigue, fuzziness, feeling not clear headed. But you can't actually put a brace around your head with PoTS and feel better. I can't, I thought the only thing I can do is like put a scarf around my neck to keep all the blood up in your head because it's so easy to be terrified with PoTS because you're told that you're feeling dizzy because there's not enough blood in your brain, and that is just terrifying. And I used to imagine myself as like one of those old-fashioned egg timers where the sand drips through. And I just felt like whenever I sat upright, it would just be a matter of time until like all that sand's gone out of the top and I need to lie down again. It was just it. I felt like PoTS and long COVID occupied like 99% of my brain capacity because I was just so afraid. Because if you think about it, there's not much you can do in life when if you just have to lie down all day. Theoretically you could study and work if you're working online or something, but life has to be lived mostly sitting upright or standing upright or walking. And so I had a lot of fear to get out of my system. And I actually also had a lot of anger because for me, I see my long COVID experience with PoTS as a burnout and all these pressures that were both self imposed through my personality traits, but also trying to work part time because the government here tells us, women need to stay in the workforce when you have kids and, all this stuff, trying to keep the household running with keep it tidy. We have therapists in the house for the boys. I need to tidy the toys. I need to cook dinner. I need to do all these things. And so I had a lot of anger. So I used a lot of journal speak. I used to even just lie under the tree in the garden and just dictate. So even now, I don't even actually handwrite journal speak. I just dictate into the journal app on my iPhone, and it comes up with a transcript of what I've said. And I found that journaling was the first glimmer of hope of a reduction in symptoms because when I journaled, I would feel better. And I realized that my PoTS symptoms, what I assumed was PoTS with this dizziness, head fatigue, fuzziness, was actually emotional stress. And I had these examples where I would feel better even though I was standing up. So I can share a couple if you'd like, or we can just, yeah.
No, please do.
Yeah. Yeah. So, for example, one night, um, I always find like bedtime, dinner, bedtime, lunch boxes, that whole routine at night quite stressful. And I was in the kitchen, I was stressed. I was trying to do dinner and my head was fuzzy and I thought, oh, I need to go lie down. It's PoTS. I don't have enough blood in my brain. And I said to Paul, can you please go get, our older son, can you please go get him into bed? Just take him away from the kitchen. I need to concentrate. Just get him into bed, please. And I remember standing in the kitchen. Paul came back in and said, "Oh, he's in bed now." And I immediately felt better. And I thought, hang on, I'm standing up. I'm standing up and the fuzziness is gone. So that's not about not enough blood in my brain. This is actually my brain is running this fatigue fuzziness circuit when it experiences stress. And that was a game changer for me to reduce my fear around physical posture and have it more related to stress. I will still get dizzy if I stand up. We were at a wedding, and that would have happened to old me, like before PoTS. We went to a wedding on a hot day. It was actually so hot that one of the guests who was sitting in the sun during the ceremony actually fainted, had to go to hospital and stay in ED overnight. Like it was a really hot, it was quite hot. And we were standing up in the shade eating canapes, and I felt so faint I had to go lie down. It was the closest I've come to fainting in public for a very long time. But I just lay on the couch and I put Curable in my ears and I listened to Beth Darnell, who's done a PhD in pain catastrophizing. I listened to her talk about pain catastrophizing. I just went, it's okay. It's understandable. I've been standing up in the sun. It's a really hot day. Yes, I've got my salty water with me, but I probably hadn't drunk enough. And we had a great time. We danced. I still like to go and lie down often. Like I would eat the main course and then have to go lie down before dessert because I was just so dizzy. But the incredible thing was I had the physical symptoms, but I had my emotional distress was basically zero because of Curable. I wasn't catastrophizing. I'll never be able to go to another wedding. I'll never be able to travel. This is terrible. My whole life's going to be a catastrophe. It was like, it's okay. It's a hot day. I felt dizzy. It's understandable. So yeah.
And so what other tools and
Yeah.
techniques have you used that has made
Mm.
a difference to you?
Yeah, sure. I made a list because I've sort of used, I really got into this, just fascinated by it really. So the sort of the groups or people I've been following on, podcasts, YouTube, their websites, all that sort of thing. So yourself, of course, Rebecca Tolan, who's a coach in the US, who just has a really lovely manner. Um, Dr. Rebecca Kennedy, who's a family medicine physician in America. She has a lovely YouTube channel with good. She did a lecture on Curable, actually, like a 1 hour um, lecture with Q&A on long COVID. And she talked about Pavlov's dog and that conditioned response. And I went, that's what, yeah, that's so true. Because if I'm in the kitchen, I get dizzy. If I'm sitting at the kitchen bench doing cooking or something, I get dizzy or fatigued way quicker than if I'm sitting up at a movie or sitting up at a restaurant with a friend. So it's not the physical posture, it's actually the stress of what I'm doing. So Rebecca Kennedy, Raylan Agel, I'm not sure if I pronounced her name correctly, but she's has a YouTube channel in the US with lots of brilliant
Loads of stories.
recovery stories.
Yeah.
Curable, of course, SERPA, stress, yeah, SERPA as well, which is sort of like curable with a British accent, which is awesome. I got Georgia Oldfield's book and I bought her online course. ANS Rewire, I used to get emails from them as well. Dr. Howard Schubner, Unlearn Your Pain. I'm still reading it. It's quite a thick book, but it is brilliant. Just so he actually did a YouTube video just last week with a group called Reorigin. It's like another mind body program. And it really clicked with me because fatigue can feel so terrible. It can feel like there's really something seriously wrong. And it's still, I honestly still had a lot of fear about fatigue because I'd had these terrible, particularly when I was first ill, so tired that I could barely eat. That hadn't happened for a long time, but I was still afraid of it happening again. And Dr. Schubner did this interview, well, it was broadcast just last week on YouTube. So if you Google like Reorigin Howard Schubner on YouTube, you'll find this video. About 20 minutes in, he starts talking about, they ask him about fatigue, the host asks him, and he said, it's just like pain. It's like a learned neural circuit. And so now, for the last week, we went to church this morning and it's quite noisy. And noise in the past had been a real sensitivity, heat and noise. And I just can tell myself, it's all right. It's not when I get, if I get that symptom, fatigue, it's not tissue damage. My body is not broken. I'm not damaged beyond repair. It's just a learned neural circuit. I don't have anything to be afraid of anymore. Like that's the self talk that I can tell myself now. So huge fan of Dr. Howard Schubner and David Clark, who are at the Psychophysiologic Disorders Association, which has now changed its name
Of which I can't remember
to,
what it's called.
yeah, is it ATNS?
Yes.
Anyway, Symptomatic Me, if that's the new website. Positively COVID, which has a lovely YouTube channel and recovery interviews. And Nicole Sachs, of course. I've just bought her book on Audible,
Yeah.
her Mind Your Body book, and I'm just loving it. I was listening to Gigi Cocktails or Cockles,
Yeah.
recovery story. She's in the book. So I was
Yes.
listening to that just before. So
Hmm.
lots. It's probably. I mean, some people might think that's too many courses to look at once, but I just love this content, and it's been such a complete game changer for me. I mean, ideally, I'd actually like to work in this field when I return to work at some point. I would like to upskill and do this work with people.
You kind of
So,
immerse yourself in this world, and
mm,
it's not just one thing that you've gone to. It's kind of hearing lots of different voices, which are kind of saying
yeah,
the same thing. I think it's really powerful.
and probably because I've had such a long history of mind body symptoms, like
Mm,
since I was 20. I
mm,
need a lot of knowledge to undo the fear that I've
mm,
had over the years.
mm.
And amazingly enough, I used to max out my private health insurance for physio. I used to just have so much physio every year for all my injuries. I had one physio appointment last year, and that was it. It's just with this mind body work that I've been doing so intensively for my long COVID and POTS. I haven't had any injuries, and and I'm lifting like a 15 kilogram, 4-year old and stuff like that, and I'm fine. It's very liberating. Yeah,
Anything else any particular tools that have helped you? So you mentioned particularly journal
yeah,
speak, so journaling, emotion,
yes,
doing that in terms of emotional
yeah. Let's
expression.
talk about that. So definitely
Other
journal
tools.
speak. Yeah, journal speak was just, I started with that because I just had so much, my mind was just so full of all these emotions. So I would just I did lots of that. And you sort of write down these lists of, I think, past experiences, current stresses, and personality traits. If
Yeah.
you Google Nicole Sachs journal speak, you'll get like a good brief on her website for how to do it. So that was just game changing. Lots of somatic tracking. Like, frankly, I can just hear Alan Gordon's voice on the Curable app and I just relax immediately. And his book, The Way Out, is
Mhm.
fantastic. It's like, takes about 3 hours to listen to an Audible. And it's such a good first base to start with this work because he's been through it himself
I
with
agree.
pain.
Yeah.
And he just has such an easy manner to listen to. And so I did lots of, even today, I did somatic tracking through Curable. Got home from church, was a bit like, oh, we've been out for 3 hours, I need a rest. So I did like a 7-minute somatic tracking. I think it was called Providing Reassurance to the Body or something. And it just, again, just like marinating in that sense of like Dr. Shubin talks about the 5 F's of your symptoms. Like if you focus on it, if you're frustrated by it, all these, if with your symptoms, but to actually um, ex- sort of see the symptoms through a lens of safety and be like, it's okay, my body is not broken, it's not damaged beyond repair, and use the SERPA questions of, uh, okay, if I'm feeling a symptom, okay, what I'm feeling emotionally right now, what's stopping me from feeling safe? And most of the time, for me, that is not posture. But with POTS, it is more stress. And so, just that simple question: what am I feeling emotionally right now? And what's stopping me from feeling safe? So I did a lot of that. Listened to a lot of recovery stories. That is so encouraging. I couldn't do it every day. Like sometimes I just want to watch a movie and forget about all this. But
Mhm.
lots of recovery videos from all these different YouTube channels I mentioned about long COVID and POTS, which were just hugely encouraging. And reading books, listening, or just listening, getting Audible and or whatever audio book platform you like, and just listening to different books in this field by these authors. Um, yeah, that's and to certainly the exercise physiologist. I did a group program with them about invisible illnesses, and they taught me a lot about how to rest properly. So if you are, they tell you about the different kinds of fatigue and how to rest. And so, for example, I've built in they call it green time, lots of green time into my day, which is before I would have been like, no, I'm too busy, I can't do it anymore. But now, I've actually, interestingly, reverted back to the hobbies I had when I was a kid before I got sick. And so coloring, like drawing, coloring, I bought these coloring materials, pencils, and I'm just loving that. I used to play music, piano and flute. Before that, I played the recorder, and I've got back into the recorder. And all different sizes. I'm going to buy, waiting for a tenor recorder to come from London, actually. And so having hobbies, having something else other than POTS long COVID or your family's needs or finances or health or current events, whatever is going on in the world, having hobbies to focus on has been so good. And I've moved back into my Christian faith. That's been really good as well, really grounding and giving me a bigger perspective on life again. And yeah, I feel like life is more balanced now. I'm not as stressed. Like if we get somewhere late, it's like, so what? You know, I mean, if we're late for the school bus and we miss the bus, that is annoying. So we don't do that. But, you know, I'm more, I would say I'm less perfectionistic. I'm less critical of myself. If I notice that my mind is full of emotions, I need to get rid of it. I just start doing a journal speak and just get it out of my system. And that has been really, really helpful. So being out in nature again. Even when I was sick, when I couldn't walk, I would just sit under, like I would literally no, lie down. Actually, I would lie down under a tree in the garden and just be exposed to nature that way. Um, Reconnecting with friends. And I knew I was a lot better when I caught up with a friend I hadn't seen for a year and I didn't even talk about it. Like I didn't even talk about POTS. I'm like, oh, I really am. Having said that, I did have a relapse recently, but yeah, uh, I've yeah, I'll just share that for because it
Mm.
might be helpful for other
Yeah,
people
please
to hear
do.
about. So my lovely POTS doctor prescribed dexamphetamine, which is a stimulant, usually probably used for ADHD, probably might people might be familiar with from that perspective. And I was advised that it would help give me more energy because I'd had these respiratory infections mid in winter, which for us is June to August. Um, and so in August, she prescribed this drug to, she said it would give me an artificial sense of energy. I had to be careful I didn't do too much because I could crash. And I thought, okay, that sounds pretty good. Let's try it. Um, but I was a bit hesitant and I didn't start it till October. And amazingly enough, the tablets are tiny, absolutely minute. They're smaller than mitodrain, but I had so much trouble swallowing them. And I'm sure it was my body saying, don't take this drug because I had to swallow copious amounts of water to take this dexamphetamine. And I went up to 20 milligrams. The idea was go up to 30. And I became so unwell around mid November. I thought it was just Christmas stress. So I was doing all these, I was trying to do lots of journal speaking, lots of meditations through, I should have mentioned that before. Meditations, awesome. So great. I can meditate. I mean, basically, when I say meditate, I mean, I lie in the dark bedroom and listen to a curable 20-minute meditation. And I can feel so relaxed that I feel like I don't even need to breathe. Like it's so lovely to just calm the nervous system right down. So meditations is another tool. But getting back to the dexamphetamine, I would try to do all these strategies because I felt so agitated because it's a stimulant. It makes people feel irritable, agitated. Your pupils dilate, so you see everything more vividly, probably. And I used to hear everything more loudly. I had to leave church one day because it was just so loud, it was unbearable. And I just assumed it was Christmas stress, but it wasn't. It was the drug. And I realized sort of around the 11th of Jan, I think I went, hang on. I didn't used to have good days, bad days. I used to be pretty consistent, feeling reasonably well once I'd recovered a bit more, because I'm now 2 years on from diagnosis. But with this dexamphetamine, I would feel like just normal one day, and the next day I'd be like 3 out of 10, so tired I could barely eat. And fortunately, my husband was home on 4 weeks leave over Christmas and could help with the boys and everything. Um, but I was so unwell, and it took me a while to realize what was going on. So I got some advice from people I knew in the field, and they said, come off that drug. And I came off it. I've been off it for about 2 weeks, and I feel so much better. So uh, one lady said at the Chronic Fatigue Foundation, I haven't been diagnosed with chronic fatigue, but with long COVID, they let people call their hotline with long COVID. And she said, yeah, definitely that went through a phase like 10 years ago. I'm surprised it's been prescribed again, but yeah, do not take that. It's not worth it. So I'm relieved to be feeling back to my normal self. I'm not having any more good days, bad days. I'm just having consistent days mostly. So just goes to show. Yeah.
So if you
I mean, I'd
think
love to get a, yeah,
if you
sorry,
think
go
where
ahead.
you were, what,
Yeah.
2 years ago when this started and where you are
Mm,
now, how would you, so you've gone
yeah.
from being like struggling to be upright for any length of time,
Yeah.
where would you describe you're at now?
I mean, now, like right now sitting here, I feel like my normal self pre-POTS, pre-long COVID. I have moments if I'm stressed where my brain just runs that fatigue circuit that it knows so well. Um, and fatigue is distressing. I call it the five, I just made this up, the 5 Ds. It's like pain. Distressing, distracting, debilitating, demoralizing, depressing. Fatigue is all of those things. And it's easy to be so afraid of it. But now that I just heard from Dr. Shubnil just last week on this video that it's just a learned neural circuit. It's just like pain. It just has really reduced my fear even further. And so like today, um, we were out for 3 hours this morning. I came home feeling a bit probably just I need a bit of space to myself, but it wasn't pathological fatigue. It was like I just need a little break. I'm going to do some journal speak for a bit, and then I'll come back and do lunch for everyone and whatnot. And I've been upright most of the afternoon. I've been doing dishwasher, lunch boxes, dinner, all the things. Paul's been out most of the day, most of the afternoon. And so I've been by myself with the boys and I've been fine. There've been times when I've gone back like maybe 10 minutes in an hour to just to have a bit of time to myself. And I call it Catherine time, actually. I
Mm.
don't call it rest time anymore. I call it time for me because it's so easy to just have your whole day just gone into your children's needs or whoever you're living with. But I just call it Catherine time. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do some coloring for 10 minutes just because I want to.
So you
And
change the
I don't feel
narrative.
guilty
So,
anymore.
so
Yeah.
kind of saying I need rest time kind of says, oh, I'm
Yes.
not very well, I need to rest. Whereas now,
Yes. I'm
no,
ill.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm well, I just need some time for
Yeah.
myself. So
Yeah. And I don't
really
feel
good
guilty
example.
anymore. Yeah. I used to feel guilty if I'd buy something for myself, like for a hobby. But now it's like, no, I'm going to buy those coloring pencils for me. I'm going to, not just for the children, I'm going to buy something for me. And I'm going to buy this recorded music and these instruments and enjoy playing it. And I don't feel guilty anymore. And even with work, they weren't supportive at all and forced me to resign. Um, but I'd already realized I was happier not working anyway. And I I think my body was actually keeping me in that fatigue to keep me out of work. And once I actually resigned, once I sent in that letter, I felt so much better. I felt so much lifted mentally, physically off me that I immediately felt better and went, oh, and I'm actually happier not working, quite honestly, at the moment at least. So um, I think if we didn't have, if I wasn't home with kids, I would actually be back at work because I have enough capacity to do part time, I would say, at the moment. But yeah, I'm actually happier for working. So, and I don't feel that pressure to go back to it just because that's the done thing now. Um, yeah. So
Mm. And so
7:48 p.m.
if is there anything else that you feel you want
Yeah,
to say that would encourage people who might be listening?
yeah. I think what I'd say is that if your doctor has ruled out tissue damage and structural issues with long COVID, then you can use the mind body approach to improve your quality of life and your functional capacity. I wouldn't say that I'm 100% recovered because I just had that relapse recently with that drug, but I feel like I feel like I don't have to be afraid anymore. I used to think, I remember when I hit 35, I thought, oh, it's a bit depressing, but I thought, at least I'm a bit closer to dying because I had so much physical pain. I'd had so many injuries, so much pain. I just thought, well, at least I'm a bit closer to dying now. But I don't feel like that anymore. I used to think I'd be sick for the rest of my life. I used to think that I, but now my internal self talk has changed to I'm going to be sick for the rest of my life, and then maybe I won't be sick for the rest of my life. And now it's like I'm not going to be sick for the rest of my life. Not with this, not with a non-structural mind body condition. I would say to people, it's you can recover. Just you use the strategies that speak most to you. use the resources I've mentioned. There's so many resources for free, like videos like this. There are so many resources, like Jim, the pain PT. I went to his website today. He's got a great website. I've been reading his website. Brilliant. There is so much free information out there. Um, so and it can definitely just reduce the fear because I felt so shackled before. It's really is to be very afraid with injuries and pain, but also particularly with POTS. It's and long COVID, like the horror stories. I don't read them anymore. Dr. Rebecca Kennedy in her long COVID talk on YouTube, which is her free YouTube channel, she says don't. If there's something major that comes up with a cure for long COVID, you'll hear about it. But the cure for long COVID is actually the mind body approach. I would say. I mean, I'm hopeful that one day I won't meet diagnostic criteria for POTS. I'm hopeful that one day I won't need medication anymore because it does cost a lot of money, $140 a month, Australian dollars. Um, I'd much rather invest that money or save it. But I feel free now and I don't have to be afraid anymore. And that's the power of this approach. Um, and you can use it alongside conservative management, like with an exercise physiologist and a POTS doctor. Definitely get the medication you need to get you upright, but use this mind body approach as well. And when you read pain in a chronic pain book, because a lot of the resources are about pain, just substitute fatigue or whatever your symptom that you're managing or POTS. Yeah.
That's a really useful tip. Anyway,
Yeah.
I think we will finish there. I just
Mm,
thank you so much for sharing your story.
my pleasure.
I'm sure it will encourage many people. Thank you so much.
Mm, my pleasure, Lorna. Okay. Bye.